Hi there. In this video I'm going to quickly take a look at the QuickBooks online test drive that's provided to us via Intuit to quickly look at how the program works. We'll also create some accounts via the chart of accounts and some general journal transactions. So I'm going to choose I'm not a robot and choose continue. And this is the QuickBooks Online Test Drive. So they use a landscaping company that's located in California as an example. So we have this vertical nav bar. You can get at most things in the program via the vertical nav bar. We also have this dashboard. The dashboard is user configurable, and we can add some shortcuts. There's a little pencil so we can add our own. So for example, we have, if you choose show all, we can get at all of the transaction types here. One of them is an invoice. Money in is accounts receivable, aka customers. And to close your transaction screen and get back to the home window, use your bottom X. And now you'll be back at the dashboard. We also have quite a bit of stuff we can do under the gear icon as well. So I'm going to quickly modify a vendor, also known as a supplier. So under expenses, you can choose expenses by clicking on it and choosing vendors. This will be a list of all of your vendors, also known as suppliers, or you can mouse over expenses and choose vendors. You get to the same spot. I'm going to manipulate Bob's Burger Joint, so when I choose him, it shows me all of the recent transactions within the last 12 months. This is the filter. We can always change the filter as well. We have the filter there. So we can find transactions for a particular vendor in this manner. I'm going to just modify Bob's Burger Joint. So I'm going to add an email. And then we can communicate with him easily via the program, and I'll save that. And we can also create transactions via expenses. So I'm going to create a bill. What a bill is, quickly, is a purchase from a vendor on account, pay later transaction. So I can choose bills and add a bill and create bill, and then choose Bob's Burger Joint, I should say. I'm just going to cancel that. I'm not going to actually enter that transaction. We look at that in depth later on. We can also choose expenses, and then new transaction. This is all of the transactions that are available for AP, and we can choose bill and then pick our vendor. Again, I'm not going to actually create one yet. We're just quickly taking a look. We can do something similar on the accounts receivable side. Again, we'll look at accounts receivable in depth later on, but if I choose sales and then customers, I get a list of all of my customers. I'll frequently call this the customer center because that's what they call it on the desktop version. And we're going to mess with Amy's Bird Sanctuary, so I can choose her. And again, to edit that customer record, I can choose edit. Just close that. I can choose edit. And I'm going to add Amy at Amy's Bird Sanctuary. .com and save. And now we can quickly send her invoices, etc. And again, if you want to create a transaction, I'll look at invoices. So if I choose sales, invoices, create invoice, and I could choose Amy's Bird Sanctuary. An invoice, by the way, is like the accounts receivable counterpart of the accounts payable bill. So again, it's a sale to a customer on account, pay later. I'm not going to actually create one. Another way to do that also is to choose sales, all sales, new transaction. This is all of the transaction types that exist in the program, and we can create an invoice. So you can do most things with that vertical nav bar. There's a few things you can't get at. So another, I consider this to be a center. It's called a list in the desktop version. We can look at our products and services. So one way to do that is using the gear icon. So we have products and services there under the lists. So I choose products and services. It gives me a list of all of my products and services. We can create new ones. We have different types. We'll look at those in detail later on. We can also choose sales, products and services. We get at the same place. We get to the same place, or sales, products and services. Again, you get to the same spot. Now, to get to the chart of accounts, there's a couple of ways, but the way I always remember is the gear icon, and under your company, chart of accounts. So these are all of the accounts that are useful for a landscaping company. When you create a brand new company, by the way, you're given a default chart of accounts based on the business type that you choose. So a lot of these are probably a default account. And I'm just going to quickly create a bank account. So I'll choose new. The account name is Chase Checking. It's a bank account, and it's a checking account. And you can give a more verbose description if you wish. And you can add an opening balance. We'll look at that in level 2. There's some details that we need to see in relation to that, and I'll choose save. And I can create another account. I'll choose new. And this will be for our magazine subscriptions that are particular to our business. So I'm going to call this Trade Publications. Account type is expenses. Detail type, dues and subscriptions. And we can give it a description. And I'll choose save. We'll look at what that billable means later on. Now, you can't actually delete many items in QuickBooks Online. You can delete transactions, but you can't actually delete a lot of other items, but you can make them inactive. So we have an account that we never use called penalties. So to find that account, I can just type in the name, and I think you can filter with as little as, for this situation, there we go, penalties. That took 5 letters to find it. And we can choose that account and then make it active. And I'll say yes, make it active. So that account will no longer show up in our chart of accounts with the default settings. We can always change the visibility and choose to see all of the inactive accounts if we like. And that account will not be available in transactions in the account list when we go to choose an account in a transaction, which we'll see later on. Now, there's also a place we'll frequently visit to make changes to the program. We don't need to do this very often, but there'll be a few things that we can add via this gear icon. We have account and settings. And I'm just going to quickly change the company name. I'm just going to add my name to the end of it. So you can change a lot about the company. Nothing's set in stone. Or very few things are, and I'll choose done. So I'm back at my transaction screen. Now the next thing I'm going to do is quickly add a couple of general journal transactions. General journal transactions are for transactions that don't fit into the other modules. The other modules are like accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll, inventory, stuff like that. So to get at your general journal transactions, there may be more than just this way, but this is the most obvious to me. I haven't poked around to find any other way to get at general journal transactions, but again, there may be. I choose new and journal entry. So I'm going to quickly transfer $5,000 into that account. So generally the rule is in manual bookkeeping that you start with the debit account first. QuickBooks doesn't care, but just for good form, I'll choose the account I debit first. Checking is an asset, so when we debit an asset, it increases it. We're going to add $5,000 to that account, and we're going to take it from savings. So when I choose savings, it populates the credit side with 5,000. When you credit an asset, that decreases it. When you debit an asset, it increases it. And we can add a description if you like. In real life, I would probably add descriptions and memos to everything. It helps as a communication method with your team. So I'm going to say transfer to Chase. Transfer from savings. Something like that. And we could say transfer to Chase from savings. Depending on where you add a memo or a description will determine on where this shows up in a report as well. And I'm going to save and new. Notice that we have save and new, save, and then we also, if you click on the drop down here, we have save and close. So we have 3 different ways of saving. If you choose save, it'll save the transaction but leave the information visible on the screen. So we can do more stuff with it later. Save and new will save the transaction and give you a new blank transaction screen. Save and close will save the transaction and close the transaction screen. So depending on the transaction type, you have those 3 options. Some you won't see that save button. So I'm going to choose save and new. I'm going to put some money into petty cash. So I go to choose an account here. Again, I want to debit petty cash. That increases that account because it's an asset, and I'm looking for petty cash and I don't see it. So I can choose add new. I can add an account on the fly instead of going back to my chart of accounts to add the account. And this will be petty cash. Petty cash is like a bank, and it's cash on hand. Petty cash is a fine description, and I'll save. And I'm going to put $300 into petty cash. And that's coming from Chase, that account we just created. And I'll add that as a memo as well. And I'll choose save and new. The next general journal transaction I'll add is a recurring transaction. So I'm going to add a loan payment. We make a payment to the loan once a month. So we'll be debiting the liability. So another way to add an account is we can just type in the account name that we wish. The benefit of this is it'll actually look through the list. So if that term loan already exists, it'll come up. So there is no term loan. I type in term loan, I hit tab, and again I get that sidebar. This is going to be a liability. We have long-term and current. Long-term are more than 1 year in length. And I'll use other long-term liabilities and save. And we make a payment of $500 from Chase Checking. You can just type in CH for Chase, and I'll call it term loan payment. Notice I'm leaving the description off this time. I'll show you why. And I want to save this as a recurring transaction. So when I save, that enters the transaction. So term loan, Chase Checking, those accounts will be affected when I choose save, and it leaves the information available on the screen. So I choose save, and then I choose make recurring. So again, this is today's payment. We want to save this as a recurring transaction. This loan payment will always be the same amount, and it'll be monthly. So regular intervals, same amount. It's useful to make it recurring, so we don't have to key it in again, and it automatically gets entered for us. So I choose make recurring, and I get this additional information for what they call a template. So I'm just going to call this term loan payment. And monthly, I'll make it the 6th day, whatever day you like. Day 6 every 1 month. Start date, I'm going to make it next month. And it'll end, but we'll deal with it then. Then I'll choose Save Template. I'll do the same thing. I'll create, again, a new journal entry. And this time it'll be my my insurance expense payment. So I can see if we already have an insurance. It looks like we already have an insurance, so I can use that one. Or if you want to create a second insurance, you can add that as well. And we are paying $150, and that's coming from prepaid expenses. The way you enter insurance, generally it's an annual payment. So when you buy insurance, you will be crediting your bank account. You'll be debiting this prepaid expenses, which is an asset, again, when you make the annual payment. And then each month, you'll be debiting the monthly portion. And that ensures that your income statement is accurate month to month, as opposed to having one big expense for 1 month for the annual premium. So that's the correct way to do it. And I'll say insurance expense is fine. What do I say in my notes? Monthly portion of annual premium. And again, I'll enter the transaction. So again, these accounts will be affected when I hit save. And then I will make that recurring. So I'll call this insurance expense. And monthly on whatever day you like. I'll use, right now it's the 8th, so I'll just use the 8th here, every 1 month. And the start date will be next month. And unfortunately, we'll never stop paying insurance. This amount may change though. I'll take a look at that later on, and I'll choose Save Template. So again, when the 8th of May rolls around, that transaction will automatically be entered. So to see a list of those recurring transactions, we can find those under the gear icon as well. So the gear icon, under lists, we have recurring transactions, and there's our term loan payment, insurance expense, couple of other recurring transactions. So if we wish to enter them now, we can also choose use. That'll bring that transaction up, and then we can then save it, also known as posting. By default, they'll be entered automatically when their date rolls around. Now, one thing you will do a lot with QuickBooks Online is find your transactions, and then you can delete them or edit them if you've made errors. So my favorite way to find a transaction, it's very meta, is to click on my magnifying glass, and I'm going to go look for that petty cash transaction that we entered. It turns out that we actually debited our Chase checking account in error. That money actually came out of our regular checking account, a different financial institution. So you click on the magnifying glass, and then you can choose Advanced Transaction Search. For your transaction type, we've only entered general journal transactions so far, so you can find all of those transactions that we've entered under journal, and there they are there. They don't you should see the amount when we're actually using the full program. I think this is just for the test drive, they don't show up, but that petty cash was our second one that we entered. So there it is there, and again, it turns out that we in reality, we actually took that money out of our checking account, so I can just change that. And save and close. So we can also delete and reverse transactions as well. If you delete a transaction, it won't show up in your transaction list in your journal report. If you reverse it, it will. So the results on the respective accounts is the same, but deleting and reversing determines whether or not it shows up in particular reports. Everything will show up in the audit report, by the way, even if you delete or reverse. So I'm going to find, again, I'll go back and find using the advanced search. I was already there, but just to look at that again, and we're looking at journal transactions. Again, this is something we've already entered. There's journal, shows all our journal transactions. So that term loan, it turns out that we had already paid off the full amount of our loan, so we did not need to add that payment. So that was our third transaction, and I want to reverse it. So again, reversing it will negate it. It'll be as if that transaction never happened. However, there will be a record of both the reversal and the original transaction in the audit trail, and it will show up on our journal report, or you can choose more and delete. The effects on the account are the same, but it won't show up on your journal report. I like to delete the transactions. I don't want them to show up on my journal report. It just gets cluttered and confusing if I do that. So I'll delete that and delete transaction. Now let's take a look at reports here. There's a lot of different reports. The common ones, of course, are income statement, trial balance, balance sheet, and the journal entries is one you'll look at all of the time as well. So under reports, if you scroll down to For My Accountant, we have journal. Now there's a little star there that'll pop up in the favorites right at the top here. This is where the starred reports go. There's income statement. I call it income statement, also known as profit or profit and loss. Profit/loss. I'll click on that little star and it'll end up in my favorites. Not so useful for the test drive. Next time we come back here, it'll be removed from the favorites as it's session based, but in reality, that's very useful. You don't have to hunt around for the reports that you use frequently. And I choose journal. It shows me all of my transactions this month to date. We're still near the beginning of May, so there's only a handful of transactions. This is a transaction that was entered by the test drive, but there's the three remaining transactions. The one that we deleted is not there. And to share this report, I can choose More Actions, and then Print Save as PDF, and then Save as PDF. It goes into my downloads. Depending on your browser, it may go to a different place, or if you're on a local area network, it may be set up so you have to choose where it saves or something like that. So I can now upload that to my assignment. Now the thing about this is if I want to take a closer look at any of these, I can just click directly on the numbers right here. I guess the one that was created by Intuit doesn't get a number, but if I want to click right on the number there, that'll drill down to the transaction. So here's our very first one. If I click on that, it brings it up as well. So that's another way to find a transaction, is you can go to your journal report and drill down on all of the existing transactions. All transactions for all modules will show up in the journal report, by the way. It's not just for general journal transactions. And then I can change anything or delete it or reverse it, whatever I like. I'm not going to manipulate anything here. I'm just going to close it. I just wanted to take a look at it. We can also share a report of the chart of accounts as well. So if I click on my gear icon, choose my chart of accounts, I still have my filter here. That's why I can't see anything. There's my chart of accounts. And again, I can run report. And then if I want to share that, again, more actions, you can share as a Excel file, CSV, PDF. By the way, if you don't have an Excel installed on your computer, you can always use Google Sheets. All that requires is a Gmail address. You can export to Excel and then upload it to Google Sheets if you want to view this Excel file without Excel. I'm just going to go to PDF. Gives me a preview of what it's going to look like. Gorgeous report, and then save as PDF. It'll go to my downloads. I can then attach it to an email, or if you're working in my course, you can add it to your discussion post via an attachment. So that is a quick look at QuickBooks Online. Again, we looked at the interface, vertical nav bar, gear icon, new, and dashboards. Dashboards is user configurable, by the way. And we quickly looked at how to modify a vendor, also known as a supplier, a customer, created a bill, an invoice. Again, those are pay later transactions for AP, AR, respectively. We added a couple of accounts, made one inactive, and looked at journal entries. Thanks so much for watching.